But our next award winner, Antonella Packard, who comes from another part of the country that you think of as, well, not a breeding ground for immigrant rights activism, coming from Utah, you actually represent a different dimension of this unfolding debate and effort and movement, which is not about what's in the shadows. You've lived a life since you emigrated here from Honduras in which you have integrated into American life, become involved in the business and civic community in your hometown in Utah, had become active in Republican politics, and were just a voice and a presence in the community. And along the way, of course, you did get involved on behalf of immigrants at various times. I know there was a period when there were controversies involving Bosnian Muslims in Salt Lake, on whose behalf you spoke up. But I want to move to one thing that was a very defining moment in 2010, when the DREAM Act itself was before the Congress, and Senator Hatch of Utah, who had earlier been a champion of the DREAM Act, was now backing off of that. And so a group of advocates had organized a protest at his Utah office, right, a sit-in.
And it was a pray-in.
A pray-in, okay. A pray-in at his Utah office, to which the authorities and law enforcement responded in a very heavy-handed way. What happened next, and how did you get involved then?
Well, I actually also, I lead a group in Utah. It's a national group called LULAC. And I had some of my youth that wanted to be involved, and also I got a call from a friend from California indicating that 2 of his dreamers were going to be in Utah, and do you mind keeping an eye on them and that they won't get into a lot of trouble? So I figured, well, okay, I'm just gonna go in, and plus this should be interesting because I was at Utah Valley University when Senator Hatch told a group of children, well, to me, they're children, but of youth, of young people, that if the DREAM Act was coming through standalone without the don't ask, don't tell clause in it, that he would vote for it. So, of course, several of the children that were there, the kids that were there, had been there, and so the people that went up to Senator Hatch's office had legal status. They were citizens. We were still university students and whatnot, but we really, at that point, did not want dreamers to go ahead and be involved so that they would get in trouble, and so that's what happened, and they went up, started reading and everything, and they said, do you mind if we just stay here? And so they were there for a couple of hours, and next thing you know, I hear helicopters on what's going on. Then I see a Homeland Security vehicle come in, said Homeland Security, and they detained 3 of the kids that were up there. All of them with legal status, all of them, and whatnot. And then what happened is that they charged 2 with trespassing, and 1 they put in a U.S. Marshal hold because guess what? They're citizens and whatnot. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, the guy that they targeted was very ethnic looking, meaning very strong indigenous features. He has a thing for Che Guevara, and he was wearing, one of those Peruvian, Bolivian little hoodie hats type of thing, kind of what Monona's daughter had on, but kind of more colorful and whatnot. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm thinking, talk about profiling. I think they got profiled, and he didn't have his passport with him. And I thought, it's a matter of his passport. In a matter of seconds, we were able to clear that out. They looked him up, and indeed, he's a citizen. Then they held him on a U.S. Marshal hold. Well,
you just went past something really quick that I think is important, which is that moment when you said, hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute, right? Because this was this moment where this was happening, the authorities had come in, something struck you as wrong, unfair, and you converted that instinct that I think many people would have of, hey, wait a minute, into action and into voice, right? You began to speak out, you began to act on the behalf of these kids.
In fact, there was no media present, and I sat there with two of the dreamers that came from California, and this coincided with, Rosa Parks' act of civil disobedience, where she actually went and, the bus. And we wrote a press release. I ghostwrote it, but it had, we went ahead and released it. Let me go ahead and tell you, because it was known that I was quoted very prominently on the article. I used to be the vice chair for the Utah Hispanic Republican Assembly. I was told immediately, you do not represent us, you need to resign, you're not wanted. I started receiving a lot of hate voicemails. I've since changed my telephone number, not because I'm afraid of people calling me or whatnot, but it's actually my business line, so it was impacting my ability to conduct business as well.
Well, this backlash was, as you say, immediate and punishing, and not just stressful, but eroding your ability to make your livelihood, eroding your ability to just maintain a normal family life, and the pressure that you came under must have been just tremendous.
It really was, but the alternative is not possible. It was wrong. Here you have a child in U.S. Marshall Holt, who was a scholarship recipient, who was threatened to have his scholarship removed. I had, where they were not charging him. So from what I understand, and I'm not an attorney, that when you're on a hold like that, they can hold you indefinitely and without due process. That is wrong. And we had to get media attention, and we had to get something, because this child is being held there for no other reason other than sitting there to remind the senator that, that he actually said that he was going to vote for the DREAM Act.
When you further had later on things to say in public, critical of candidate Romney's positions on these issues, the backlash intensified, right? And
it did. It really did. I have to tell you that I have been told that either I resign from a position that I held in the board, or that this other individual is going to resign because I was an extremist, that they don't understand why I call myself a conservative or traditional or whatnot when I'm embracing all these liberal ideas. And I was also told when, in terms of seeking employment or even contracts, when people were very enthusiastic about what I had to offer, or at least bringing me on board, where offers were rescinded, where projects were not funded, where doors started closing. And it was, let me tell you.
Where you are still on there's an article critical of you on the splash page for the
and they still have this terrible thing on the front page, on the splash page of the Utah Hispanic Republican Assembly, where pretty much calling, it's very name calling, very negative. And I'll have to tell you, that doesn't hurt me at all, and I would do this again. But let me tell you, when you know that something is right and you go against that, you are betraying yourself. And in this case, we could not stay silent. I cannot stay silent and see. And if that's what they want to put up, let me tell you, I have developed a very thick skin.
Well, one of the things that is, I just invite all of you to step into Antonella's shoes for a moment and think about, you may not be in a world that is this specific one of tight-knit Utah Republican political activists, but whatever your tight-knit world is, think for a moment about that world, about your reputation in it, about the, again, social capital that comes from your place in it, about the health, literally, mental and emotional, that is sustained by your friendships and relationships in that, about your ability to conduct business in those circles, and then think about that choice, again, that choice point of seeing and knowing that something's not right, hearing that inner voice that says, hey, wait a minute, but then deciding to put everything in that tight-knit circle on the line. It is not a choice that a lot of people would actually make. affirmatively. It might be one that they ultimately have to be pushed to, but it is not one that many people would make affirmatively, so rapidly and so kind of instinctively, Antonella, as you did. And I want to know, I mean, partly I think this has to do, you were telling me earlier about your own family history and the fact that you are in Utah and Utah's history that gives you a sense of greater purpose here. Can you describe that?
Yes, I can. It frightens me when I hear very extreme talk about scapegoating a group of people. You see, and I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have a thing for genealogy. We like pedigree charts. I was basically trying to look up some information, and I come from a family of Sephardic Jews on my father's side. And from my dad's side, my paternal grandmother, they were Jews from Salonika, Greece. And we lost pretty much what you see, me, my sister, her daughter, my brother, my father, is what remained of that line. Everybody else, I don't have pictures. I don't have their stories. I don't know their names. I don't know when they lived. I mean, a whole big hole in my history as a result of something that was just atrocious, as it was the Holocaust. I'm sorry. But people think, oh, but that can't happen again and you're just overreacting. And you look at the history and you look how Germany at the time had wonderful people, good people, but they did absolutely nothing. They did not raise their voices. And then millions of people were slaughtered by it. And it starts with words, with imagery, with scapegoating. And then they said, oh, but that could never happen in America. That's my favorite one. That could never happen in America. And I say, I live in Utah. In my backyard, there's an interesting place called Topaz. For those of you familiar with American history, and you know what happened during World War II as well, Topaz was where our Japanese American brothers and sisters were interred. They said interred. I mean, you know, and I'm kind of thinking, lovely, that was a concentration camp where we went ahead and put away people because of their race, because of who they were. And it can happen. And when we start talking about people that are of different faiths, of different traditions, of different cultures and whatnot, and we start blaming people over things that are happening, that is wrong, and we are leading in a very slippery slope. Plus, Eric, how does it, and those of you who have worked with immigrants, particularly attorneys and whatnot, when people are trying to give you their children, when a mother is trying to give you their child because their partner has been deported and they're afraid that they're next and they want a better life for their children in America, let me tell you, I hope those of you who have never seen a deportation process or have never seen a family being torn asunder, that you never see that ever. Because it's one of the most horrible things to see when your families are being torn apart. And I have to say, I am not a perfect person. I'm not here to tell you that I am pious, but I do try to live my faith. And my faith says that we welcome those who are strangers in our land, that we have to be kind and loving to each other. And what part of that is kind and loving, I don't know. But let me tell you that you cannot stay silent after you've been a witness.
I think one of the other things that is so important for us to know and remember about Antonella's story is that it's not like there's some neat, pretty bow, happy ending to all this. It's hard. She made a choice that was hard, and it's had consequences that still are hard. And that, to me, is a continuing measure of your courage. The courage lies not just in the catalytic act, but then in living a life that navigates the consequences of that catalytic act. And as you say, you are guided as you navigate by faith, but you're also guided by a deep, deep sense of what is right, that you can give any label of any faith that is just a human thing.